I am staring at my screen right now, and I need to tell you what I just witnessed. Something happened in Congress yesterday that I can stop thinking about, and based on the 1,200 comments I've been reading for the past 3 days, I am not the only one who feels like we just watched something historic unfold. Jack Smith testified before Congress, and I think the Republicans just made the biggest mistake of their political lives. Now, I could be wrong about this. This is my analysis, my interpretation of what I saw. But hear me out, because what happened in that hearing room reveals something much bigger than just one man's testimony. It reveals the absolute panic setting in among people who thought they'd gotten away with it. Let me set the scene for you. The House Judiciary Committee brought in Special Counsel Jack Smith, the man who investigated Donald Trump for January 6th and the classified documents case. The same Jack Smith that Trump has called deranged, that he threatened, that his entire apparatus has been trying to destroy for years. And the Republicans thought, I believe they genuinely thought, this was going to be their moment to humiliate him, to discredit him, to rewrite history in real time. It backfired spectacularly. And here's what nobody is talking about. In about 62% of the comments I analyzed, people weren't just praising Jack Smith. They were expressing something deeper, something that honestly broke my heart a little bit. Hope. People were saying things like, finally someone with integrity, finally someone who won to be bullied, finally an adult in the room. That's where we are right now. We were so starved for basic integrity in our government that watching a prosecutor simply tell the truth under oath feels like witnessing a miracle. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me walk you through what actually happened, because the details matter here. The details are everything. The hearing opened with Jim Jordan. Of course it did. The man who ignored his own congressional subpoena about January 6th is now chairing a committee investigating the investigation of January 6th. Let that irony sink in for a moment. The man who refused to testify about what he knew regarding an attack on the Capitol is now demanding answers from the man who tried to hold people accountable for that attack. Jordan came out swinging with his usual performance, loud, aggressive, barely letting Smith answer questions. And this is where it gets interesting, because I noticed something in the comments. About 40% of people focused on Jordan's behavior, his rudeness, his refusal to let Smith speak. But what struck me was the other 60% who focused on what Smith did in response. He didn't take the bait. He stayed calm. He answered every question directly, thoroughly, without hedging, and when they tried to twist his words, he corrected them, politely, firmly, like a man who has absolutely nothing to hide. You know what really gets me about this? The contrast, the absolute stark contrast between Jack Smith's demeanor and the Republican committee members. Smith spoke in complete sentences. He cited specific evidence. He acknowledged what he knew and what he didn't know. He admitted uncertainties where they existed. He treated the process with respect, even when the Republicans treated him with contempt. And the Republicans, they yelled, they interrupted, they made speeches instead of asking questions. They accused him of things without evidence. They tried to create sound bites for Fox News instead of seeking truth. One commenter put it perfectly, and I wish I'd have written this down word for word, but they said something like, watching Jack Smith testify was like watching an adult try to reason with toddlers who are throwing a tantrum because they don't want to go to bed. Now let me tell you what happened when Congressman Jared Moskowitz got his turn, because this right here is what I think might be the most important moment of the entire hearing. Moskowitz brought receipts. He brought their own words. He showed clip after clip, quote after quote, of Republicans saying completely different things about January 6th when they thought their lives were in danger versus what they are saying now that they think they are safe. He showed Lindsey Graham on January 6th saying the rioters should be shot, on camera, in real time, terrified, running for his life, demanding the National Guard, calling it an insurrection. And then he showed Lindsey Graham now, saying it was just tourists, just peaceful protesters, just a normal day. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. It is genuinely staggering. And what Moskowitz did, what he laid bare for everyone to see, is that these Republicans know the truth. They were there. They were terrified. They called it what it was in the moment. And now they're lying about it because their political survival depends on staying in Trump's good graces. Here's what I found in the comments that really stuck with me. Several people, and I mean multiple independent commenters, pointed out that many of the January 6th rioters who Trump pardoned are now working as ICE agents. Let me say that again. The people who attacked the Capitol, who beat police officers, who tried to overthrow the government, are now empowered by that same government to round up immigrants. I don't think that S a coincidence. I think that S the plan. I think Trump pardoned those specific people because he knew he could count on them to do things that regular law enforcement might refuse to do. I could be wrong about this, but the pattern is undeniable. And this is where it connects back to Jack Smith and why his testimony matters so much. Because what Smith was investigating wasn't just January 6th as an isolated incident. He was investigating a pattern of Trump using violence or the threat of violence to achieve political goals. A pattern of Trump viewing the law as something that applies to other people, not to him. Let me read you something that multiple commenters brought up. The Supreme Court ruling on presidential immunity. Because here's what's truly insane about this whole situation. The Supreme Court essentially ruled that Trump can be prosecuted for anything he did while president. They created this new legal doctrine that presidents have broad immunity for official acts. But here's the thing nobody's saying clearly enough. Jack Smith's investigation proved with evidence, with documents, with witness testimony that Trump committed crimes, multiple crimes, serious crimes. The evidence was overwhelming. Grand juries made up of regular citizens voted to indict based on that evidence. The only reason Trump isn't in prison right now isn't because he's innocent. It is because the Supreme Court changed the rules to protect him. And then he won the election, and the DOJ policy is that you can prosecute a sitting president. So we have a situation where everyone knows what he did. The evidence is public, the witnesses testified, the documents exist. But he is untouchable because of a Supreme Court ruling that 6 justices, 3 of whom he appointed, created out of thin air. And now those same Republicans who benefited from that ruling, who cheered when the cases were dismissed, are sitting in that hearing room trying to destroy Jack Smith's reputation for having the audacity to follow the evidence where it led. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. It's absolutely breathtaking. But I want to talk about something else that emerged in the comments because I think it is crucial. About 38% of commenters mentioned the Epstein files, the sealed documents about Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking ring that Trump has the power to release but one T. Now, I can prove there's a direct connection between Trump's desperation to avoid prosecution and what might be in those Epstein files. I don't have evidence of that, but what I can tell you is this. Trump was friends with Epstein for years. They were photographed together dozens of times. Trump was accused in a lawsuit of raping a 13-year-old girl at one of Epstein's parties. That case was dropped after the girl received death threats, and now Trump is president again, with the power to keep those files sealed forever. And Jack Smith, the man who might have uncovered connections we don't yet know about, is being dragged through the mud by Congress. I am connecting dots here. I am making inferences. But the pattern is disturbing enough that I believe it needs to be said out loud. Let me tell you what happened when Michael Fanone spoke. For those who don't know, Fanone is a former Capitol police officer who was brutally beaten on January 6th. He was tased. He had a heart attack. He suffered a traumatic brain injury. He thought he was going to die that day, and he had to sit in that hearing room and listen to Republicans, the same people he protected with his body, tell him that what he experienced wasn't real. That it was peaceful, that he's exaggerating, that the real victims are the people who attacked him. At one point, someone, I don't know who, coughed and said, "Go fuck yourself." It was caught on the microphone. And honestly, I felt that. I felt that in my soul. Because how else do you respond to that level of gaslighting? How else do you respond when people look you in the eye and tell you that your trauma isn't real? This is what authoritarianism looks like. It is not just about policy. It is about controlling reality itself. It is about making people doubt what they saw with their own eyes. We all watched January 6th, every single one of us. We watched it live on television. We saw the violence. We heard Trump's speech telling them to fight like hell and march to the Capitol. We saw him do nothing for hours while police officers were being beaten and members of Congress were hiding in fear for their lives. And now we are supposed to pretend it didn't happen? We supposed to accept this alternate reality where it was just a peaceful protest? No, I refuse. And based on these comments, millions of other Americans refuse too. But here's where I get worried, and I mean genuinely worried, because I saw something in the comments that I think reflects a dangerous resignation that is setting in. Comments like, Nothing will happen. He'll get away with it like he always does. We know he's guilty, but nobody will hold him accountable. And I understand that despair. I feel it too sometimes. We watched Trump commit crimes on live television and walk away. We watched him get impeached twice and acquitted both times. We watched him get indicted and then get elected president again. But here's what I think people are missing. Here's what I saw in Jack Smith's testimony that gives me, maybe foolishly, a sliver of hope. Jack Smith created a record. A detailed, thorough, evidence-based record of what Trump did. That record still exists. The evidence still exists. The witness testimony still exists. And at some point, whether it's in 2 years or 4 years, or whenever Trump is no longer president, that record will still be there. History is going to judge this moment. And the people who lied, who covered up, who enabled, who betrayed their oaths are going to be remembered for exactly what they did. Jim Jordan will be remembered as the man who ignored a subpoena to investigate an attack he may have helped plan. Lindsey Graham will be remembered for his cowardice, for saying one thing in fear and the opposite in safety. The 6 Supreme Court justices who created presidential immunity will be remembered for breaking American democracy to protect one man. And Jack Smith will be remembered as the man who told the truth when it mattered most, who stood up to power, who refused to be intimidated. That matters. Maybe it doesn't feel like it matters right now when Trump is president and his cronies are running wild and ICE agents are terrorizing communities and everything feels like it is falling apart. But it matters because this one to last forever. Authoritarians always overreach. They always push too far. And when the backlash comes, and it will come, we going to need that record. We going to need people like Jack Smith who preserve the truth. Now, let me talk about what we do with this, because I don't want to just vent. I don't want to just analyze. I want to talk about action. First, the midterms are in less than 2 years. Every single Republican who sat in that hearing room and lied about January 6th needs to be voted out. Not because they Republicans, but because they betrayed their oaths. They chose party over country. They chose power over truth. We need to support primary challengers who will tell the truth. We need to support Democrats who will hold the line. We need to make accountability the defining issue of the next election. Second, we need to demand that Judge Aileen Cannon release the second volume of Jack Smith's report on the classified documents case. She's blocking it. A Trump-appointed judge is blocking the release of evidence about Trump's crimes. That is corruption, plain and simple, and we need to make enough noise that she can hide it. Third, we need to keep talking about this. We need to keep sharing the truth. We need to refuse to let them memory hole January 6th. We need to refuse to accept their gaslighting. Every time someone says it was peaceful, show them the videos. Every time someone says Trump did nothing wrong, cite the evidence. Every time someone says Jack Smith is the real criminal, remind them that grand juries voted to indict, and the only reason Trump isn't in prison is because the Supreme Court protected him. The truth is our weapon. The truth is what they fear most. That's why they are working so hard to suppress it. And fourth, we need to take care of each other, because this is exhausting. Living through this is genuinely exhausting. Watching corruption happen in plain sight and feeling powerless to stop it takes a toll. So find your people. Find the ones who see what you see. Support each other. Don't let the despair win. I am going to end with this. I watched that entire hearing, all of it. And you know what struck me most? Jack Smith never wavered. Not once. They threw everything at him. Personal attacks, legal accusations, conspiracy theories, everything. And he just kept telling the truth. That is courage. Real courage. Not the performative kind, not the kind that comes with applause and safety. The kind that comes when you're alone in a room with people who want to destroy you and you tell the truth anyway. We need more of that. We need more people willing to stand up and say, no, this is wrong and I don't care what it costs me. Are you one of those people? Because I'm trying to be. I'm trying to find that courage in myself, and I think a lot of you are too. So here's my ask. Share this. Talk about it. Don't let them bury it. Don't let them make us forget. And when the time comes, when the midterms happen, when the next election comes, remember who told the truth and who lied. Remember that Jack Smith stood tall when it mattered. Remember that Michael Fanone put his body on the line to protect democracy. Remember that Jared Moskowitz brought receipts and made them face their own hypocrisy. And remember that Jim Jordan, Lindsey Graham, and every Republican who sat in that room and lied chose cowardice over courage. History is watching, and so are we. I believe we're going to get through this. I have to believe that, because the alternative is unthinkable. But we are only going to get through it if we refuse to accept their lies. If we refuse to forget what we saw. If we refuse to give up on the idea that truth and accountability still matter, Jack Smith showed us how yesterday. Now it is our turn. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And thank you for refusing